relationship go through what we call transitions. Every 7 years, there's a shift that happens. The truth about it is, by the time you get to year 5, year 7, the person that you got married to looks like they changed. And you hear people saying, you don't love me anymore. And the reason for that is because the thing that attracted you was the chemistry, right? We said that, the chemistry. And honestly, the chemistry is the oxytocin, the serotonin, the dopamine. And the job of that chemical is to attract, not sustain. And so when you're in a marriage relationship, year 1, you say the vows, till death do us part, and then you come home and the person is there. And you get mad, and usually you get mad and you go to your car, but they're there. You don't have a huge house, so there's no wiggle room, they're there. What happens is that marriage is not just the vow and the ring on the 4th finger. It's psychological. You have to be married here in your head and your body. You have to think about it as the marriage is now becoming, ing. You are not one, you're becoming one, which means that there is a journey that you have to take to become one. You're gonna find that you're still a morning person and she's still a night person. You still like spicy food and the other person doesn't like that. And so when you're cooking now, that ing is what's coming into place. And so you have people who give up on their marriage in the first 3 years, 4 years, the first year, because they don't understand the whole idea of the ing, that we're becoming one. And you come with your cultural differences, your own ideologies. The older you are, the more stuff you have in your baggage, in your suitcase. And when we start to unpack those things, we're seeing differences. And when we see differences, we say, you don't love me anymore. You've changed. Things are different. And what's supposed to happen is, it's like riding a bike, riding a motorcycle. What I've learned about riding a motorcycle, the challenge is in the bend, when you're going around the bend. When you're going around the bend, if one person leans this way and the other person leans that way, you're gonna topple over. But it's trusting whoever is the driver at that time and leaning into the bend. But what happens is a desire to be myself. I want to be me while I'm becoming us. But there has to be some loss of me so the us can happen and be sustained over time. Marriages, especially in the body of Christ, the place that we're most vulnerable is in marriages. We're good professionally, we're good academically, we're good at so many different things, but we're not good in terms of relationship. And when you look at Genesis 3:16, what you see there, you see the Bible talks about the woman, the relationship is the first place that you see that there's a curse on the relationship. It says her desire would be to her husband, and he would rule over her. Now, when you look at that, if you're not a student of the text, you're going to say that word desire is a beautiful word. She desires him. But when you look at the root of the word, what it means is she wants his position, power struggle inside of the relationship. She wants that place. Her desire would be to her husband, and the word doesn't say, but he would rule over her. If it was but, it would mean that it would neutralize what came before. So it would mean that she will not have rule. But it says, and he would rule over her. So she is fighting for the position And he is saying, not on my watch. And the antidote to that comes in Ephesians, where it says, wives submit, husbands love. Whenever we find that power struggle, the word submission does not mean that I'm subservient. It doesn't mean that I am not wise. The only person that can put down power is the powerful. The only way, if I submit to you, it doesn't mean I lose who I am. It means that I put it aside so that I can focus, I can defer to you. And when you come back in Psalms, what you see is that manifested in the Proverbs 31 women. So the challenges that we're having, and one of the things that we don't do that comes out of that scripture is that we don't understand that there are four people in the relationship. 4 people in the relationship. So let's put God, the man, and the woman. Who knows the third in a marriage? God, the man, the woman. Not children yet. I just told you the relationship. So it's the man. So we have God. We have man and woman. And when we externalize the relationship, because we have to think about the relationship as, let's say, a plant that you just bought, or a pet that you just brought into the home. What it requires from you is your time and attention. So if we externalize the relationship, I don't like to do this, you don't like to do that, but the relationship is requiring that we do it. I don't like talking all the time. When I tell you something, when I tell people something one time, they need to get it. And the other person saying, well, I don't get it every time. If we both stay in our place of, this is who I am, it doesn't benefit anyone. But then if we say, what does the relationship need? Then the relationship needs some compromise. The relationship needs me to empathize. The relationship needs me to get off the phone. The relationship needs me to be more empathic. The relationship, you see what I'm saying? So it's not about what I want, it's what's good for the relationship. So when I work with couples, I work with the relationship. I'm the voice of the relationship. And the man would say, I don't like when she does this. And he said, I don't like. And we say, what does a relationship want? The relationship may want the man to be more tender. You know, stick around a little bit and help wash the dishes. Yeah? That's the relationship, because once the relationship gets that, it feeds you a level of intimacy that you cannot get if you are just trying to work at it together. So when you externalize it, you're at work or you're somewhere, the pastor says, I want you to go on a mission trip with me. And you say, yeah, I can go. That's me. But how does it affect the relationship? Because then my answer has to be, now I need to confer with someone while I'm physically, mentally, financially, and everything able to do this. How does it affect the relationship? And there is something, especially for the woman who feels she's Abigail and she's married to a fool, and for people who are married and they may be smarter and all that other stuff to their spouse, especially for a female, you gotta know what you got into. And I'm saying this, and I hope you don't stone me. The voice of God is not going to override the voice of your husband if you've chosen. Because of the order, right? So God says that I need to go to Africa and I need to work and do all of that. I'm interceding, and God told me this in prayer. Why would God not tell you and give you the release from your husband? Why? If God called me, and I'm a woman of God, and I'm praying, and God called me, and he told me to go to a mission trip in Africa. Why would he not tell my husband to release me to go? But, but why would God not say that to my husband? The husband is stubborn? Okay. All right, what else? Okay, that's a good question. What did the Bible say the wife has to do with the unbelieving husband, though? With the unbelieving wife? Here's the thing, there's something about order and honor that unlocks things that we cannot do on our own. The posture, especially the posture of the woman, and while she's amazing and she's big and God is using the posture of her heart has to be the order of God. And God, you gotta be able to trust that God will take care of all things if you seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness and everything else. Now, what will happen to the relationship if the stubborn husband says, no, don't go, and she goes? What happens to the relationship? Breakdown. Just so you know, God only has one wife. It's the church, right? It's the church. So don't try to say, well, I'll get divorced and get married to Jesus. No. Jesus already has a bride. He already has a bride, right? Don't try to make him commit adultery. But you see what I'm saying? Because we have to understand that the place that we're failing is in our relationship. And because we have a concept of God being disorderly and causing chaos, the will of God brings the peace of God. And if after this is done, and we've done it, it's just like, you know what? God said to go, I'm going. Forget everything else. But there's an order. When you look in the book of Genesis and you see that Eve took the lead, God kept her in the leadership position when he was going to punish. If you look what happens, you will see God, he punishes the serpent. He calls the serpent first. And he disrupts the patriarchal leadership where man is always first. Like he came to the garden and he said, Adam. Because although Eve did something, he understood he's staying with that order. But he disrupts that order when it comes to punishment. He goes with the serpent and then he goes to the woman. Because when she decides that she takes the lead, he keeps her in that place and punishes her first before he punishes the man, right? So it's very important to be able to look at the relationship and what benefits the relationship. You have two people. What makes them? Let me ask you, what makes a marriage a marriage? Don't tell me God, and what else? Don't tell me love. What makes it marriage? Compromising, commitment, intimacy, communication. But do you see that all of those things, like I was saying earlier, is coming from here? It's me assessing what will make our living together better. People do not just get into this euphoric place because they had a beautiful wedding. The marriage. So someone would say, I wouldn't pay to go to a retreat, but you ask them how much they paid for their wedding, it will be $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. And I don't know if you guys are like me, but a lot of people have not studied how to be a husband, how to be a wife. That's why we're thinking about having the school of husbands and wives. Because how do you get it right? You wing it. You're in it and just like, yeah, well, on TV they do this and I feel like doing that. There is no step-by-step. That and parenting, there's no step-by-step process. That's why a lot of the marriages, a lot of people are in sexless marriages. And that's what I want to just kind of rest a little bit to make you very uncomfortable. A little bit. I don't know if they told you, but I'm a sex therapist. And one of the things that I find that if for a lot of women, not every woman, a lot of women who grew up in the Pentecostal church, the holiness, it seems like the more holy a woman is the less horny she is. Yeah? Okay, don't worry. It's if you see some of your faces, it seems like she loses that sense of sensuality as she gets closer to God. When God put the woman together and there's a part of her anatomy that he just stuck in there and he said, there's no reason for that. All that it is pleasure. It doesn't have any function. If you guys don't know what that is, check me later. Y'all should know. But it's really important to understand that has to be a great part of your marriage. And when it's not there, you want to ask yourself why. And if it is because you're getting closer to God and you're spending more time with the Lord. I did a workshop with some pastors and I asked, when was the last time they had sex? You had people who were up to 4 years without. And remember I was saying that sometimes things happen and you have to find out why. When we're talking about desire, and desire for both the man and the woman, sometimes for the woman the estrogen levels are low. And it's a medical situation that you want to kind of think about. I've never been a man, and if this was like the man's workshop, we'll let the other men talk about it. But there's a feeling that a man thinking about sex is a dirty thing. But you have to blame God because that's kind of how he's wired. That's kind of how he's wired. But what becomes concerning is when the man loses desire, the sexual intimacy. And we have a notion that in the relationship, the sex drive is usually higher with the man than it is the woman. And that's not always the case. And because if that happens in a relationship, and what happens is that the man begins to feel the pressure of that. You guys understanding me so far? Okay, so what happens in marriage is the danger of silence, right? So he is worried about performance, so he makes no gesture, and he starts watching porn. She feels rejected and angry, but she says nothing. So we're talking about the danger of silence. She fears that she has lost sexual desires and it avoids responding to intimacy by going to bed earlier or later. Busy with this and busy with that and all of that, those kinds of stuff, right? He wants to say something about her never dressing up anymore. She wishes he would shave the way he used to. Neither says anything, all right? He knows he is depressed, but hears that antidepressant medication may impact sexual functioning, so he's not going to go deal with that. She can't get past a flirtation he had years ago. We'll talk about that. Forgiveness. And sometimes if there was an indiscretion, let's say there was inappropriate texting or something to someone else, there are times that is brought up as the reason why we're not being intimate now, because every time I do that, I remember. Both are really satisfied with more affection and less actual intercourse, but neither says anything, anticipating criticism from the other. So does that kind of sound like something the neighbors deal with, not you guys? Any thoughts on that? Talk to me. This is a place that you can talk. The whole idea of intimacy and the feeling of connectedness is very important. The one thing that leaves first when a marriage is going downhill is touch. You look in a car and you can see people, there are little things that you can see. You see one person leaning on this window and the other person leaning on that window. Because what the body does, the body says, we're not connected. And we have to think the biggest testimony that we have is what God has done and what Calvary has done. Calvary is for reconciliation. And when we get divorced for irreconcilable differences, it's a slap in God's face. Now, if it is that there is domestic violence involved, yeah, if he's a Hittite, you be a Levite, right? Yeah, if he's a Hittite, you be a Levite. Just out of there. But you know what? You see what we just did? Women beat their husband every day. A lot of the domestic violence, not all of them, initiated by the woman. Spit on him, push him, hit him, and he responds. Police comes, The police takes the one who cries the most. Yeah? But it's not necessarily that. And tapping into our femininity, right? Because we match the energy, the male energy, and so there is a lot of our men are feminized in terms of how they deal with in their relationship because they're scared because she's loud. So we want to look at how intimacy can keep the relationship together and understand that there are times that the desire is not there, but the desire is an emotion, and emotion is coming from a way of thinking. So when I no longer desire my spouse, there is something there, and it does not mean there are times that sickness would come in or there's stuff that would happen that would hinder actual intercourse, but it does not affect intimacy. Questions? Let's take some questions. No, he's recording.
But to someone who's close to you, that could also affect how you behave in a relationship.
I'm trying to follow, but put a little bit more meat on there so I can.
Okay,
What happened?
So let's say, for instance, like a sister was molested by a family member, and you grew up seeing that. Could that be affecting you in your relationship?
It's called vicarious. Yeah, vicariously, yes. But here's what I'm going to say to you guys. I am a mental health specialist, a clinician, and all that other stuff. But we have to understand if there's a problem about sexual intercourse, is something that should come up, or molestation or something like that, is something that should come up in the dating. If not, it can be looked at as betrayal. So in the dating or the early times, because what's happening is that you have a whole lot of sex maybe before, first year, second year, and then the rest of it just goes downhill. And the question is this coming from a mental illness, or has the desire dropped? Sex is not a man's thing. It's not like, I'm going to give him some. I laugh when people do that, because how are you going to do that? It's not me staying here and say, take this. Although some people can just lay down and just let it happen. But it should be mutually beneficial. I can tell you, and you can check this out yourself, the science says that sex minimizes headaches.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
I don't get headaches.
Yeah, good. I love it. Right, so some of the things that for for us, God has put it in there so that it has its healing mechanisms as well, right? So you want to be able to say, is this a real thing, or is my desire for my spouse sexually dropping? And if it is dropping, then you begin to work on it, because it is not a feeling. There's sometimes you need to just bring your body into subjection. If the wife, there's sometimes the woman is the one who is more sexually, has a greater sexual appetite. And whenever we leave I wish I had a bottle, if you think about a bottle of water, our job in marriage is to keep each other full with affirmation, with compliments, with sex, with everything. We need to keep them full. When you leave, when you let your person go out, your spouse go out with it, it's half. Now, you have to think, if that bottle is full of water and it wants to get, I don't know, Pepsi, it can't. It doesn't have the capacity for it because it's full. Yeah? But what happens when it's empty or half empty? There's space for it. You know, there was a time the example is a car. You know, you have a luxury car and it only takes supreme gas. And you vow never, ever, 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 but you let it get down to E. And you don't have enough. The first gas station only has regular gas, right? You don't have the wherewithal to get to there. Guess what's going to happen because you let it get on empty? You're going to break your rule. You're going to break your rule and put the regular gas in there. So the whole idea is not to get down to E. Because when you allow your person, I see you, when you allow your spouse to get down to E, the relationship gets vulnerable. Things they would not do, places they would not go, stuff they would not do, they end up doing it because it's all the way down to E.
At what age really should a guy and a woman really lose sex drive? Because I mean, like, no, because I know when people say they're together like 45, 50 years and they're in their 70s, do they really still have sex drive?
Listen, you guys may know, and you guys know Apostle Alvin Nicholson. Some of you know, it's Wharton Nicholson's, right? They're celebrating 50 years, and I've been around them from the time I was a teenager. And I was like, is this real? Because they look like they have the perfect marriage, and I spent some time with them. On that time, I was doing a workshop, and his wife was speaking at the workshop, and I had to take her back to the Nicholson's home. And I bring her to the Nicholson's home, pretend that. So I'm him, and that's her. And I'm over here talking to him, and he's looking at her like she is the next meal, the next. I was like, hold on, Zion. The man was looking, it wasn't like he was performing for me, right? He hadn't seen her for about 4 days. But he was like, he wanted everybody to go and then just like to, yeah. But so we can't put a time, and here's the thing, it's a beautiful thing. And when the sexual organs don't work, please don't think I'm crazy, right? The mouth works all the time.
No, what I'm saying is I understand what you're saying in that, perspective. But I believe when you reach a certain age, right? I mean, you might still have a desire to, but I think we could just like hug, maybe kiss, we hold a hand, we talk something that we used to do back then. But to me, I don't know. I can't see myself reaching 65 and 70 and still want to go up and talk my husband or not. because maybe I might even have legs to reach up there. That's how I think about it.
Well, you could sit on the
And I
chair.
think, but no, but I think where I would get my peace in is just knowing that we there for each other. If I don't feel well, he will be able to get me something to eat, a cup of tea. I think that age, that's how I look at it.
Yeah, but you see what you're saying, and I'm not trying to be mean to you.
Yeah.
I. What does a relationship need?
We.
Yeah.
No,
But how, so you are satisfied. If both of y'all decide, oh, we 70 and don't want to do anything but just hold hands, cool.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm
If,
saying. If it's abnormal for both of us, that's what I really should have been saying.
is right. But here's what happened. You have to see if that person got to that place because they're not getting any. Is it that sex not happening and they're just like, you know what, I'm not going to rock the boat. I'm 70, I'm just going to stay in this. But if you go and you put some lingerie and say, hey, Mr. 70, 80-year-old man, come here. Let me do a lap dance. What he's going to say, in the name of Jesus, I bind you, Satan.
No, because my husband that I live with, he's funny. He's a funny person. So if I go into bed with my pajamas, he'll be like, so Susan, if you had to come to bed with all them clothes, like it would marry North Pole, and So, I mean,
You know you're answering your own question, right? Yes, ma'am. He's trying to come in there with some thongs and some, yeah.
No, but I just wanted to find out if
There's
when
not,
I reach
no.
that age,
No, you
I
haven't,
know.
no. I don't know, because you see the older, when I was doing some research with some of the older people, I mean, like really in their 80s and all of that, they still were looking for relationship. And although the sexual organs doesn't work, then they still have that sense of intimacy and touch. And it's beautiful. You want to be able to keep that. You want to be able to keep it. Right? Yeah? All right, one last quick question before we wrap up. Yes. I think they're at the door, so let's get it. Go ahead.
Just was curious about your thoughts on how to bridge the gap of the differences. And, we can look at sexually where, people like things different. Someone likes it harder, or I like it softer, or whatever, or frequency is different. But it also goes into just marriage in general. I feel like, at least for Kevin and I, our differences are what make us great, but it's also our biggest flaw sometimes because, I like to go out and he could stay home every day, and so how do you, we're constantly, trying to bridge that gap. So what could you say from either a sexual standpoint or just in general of like constantly working on keeping the gap of where those differences are?
Yeah, the first thing is to externalize the relationship, what's good for the relationship, and feed it a lot of compromise. Because when you invited the person into your life, there has to be an idea, I am going to need to change, shift. If we buy a dog, your life changes, right? So even with a person, you don't want to walk, you don't want to go outside, but I have to walk the dog. So it's in there thinking, this will be good. Okay, we'll stay home this weekend, we'll go out next weekend. We'll try it your way. And then what happens, we do an exercise with a couple, your way, my way, our way. So finding the our way. So this is the way I do it, this is how I grew up, and you put a case for that, and then, I'm going to be here later if you guys have more questions, real quick.
Real quick. So you talked about like seeing stuff on the phone or whatever. How can you get past, I guess, being triggered that something that happened in the past that is, I guess, causing a feeling of unforgiveness, puts you in a space, and then the intimacy is broken? How can you get past that to bring back the togetherness, I guess? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so real quickly, and this will be a big thing, but you don't want to get past it, you want to get through it. And in terms of getting through it, you want to be able to say, do I want to lose, like what we did, do I want to lose what I have, looking at what went on. The person, we're done. The person who breached the relationship would have to work harder. But there has to be a place of forgiveness and letting go of what this was. And you see that word was. Because the mind is going to say, stay here, feel that pain, respond to this. And so what you have to do is literally override it over and over again, where we rewrite what's in the subconscious mind. And we put a label on that as complete and in the past. It's very important, though, for the other person to be transparent. Let's say it's the phone, that the phone doesn't have a lock, that it's not, not something, if it rings, they're not running like a bat out of hell to try to get it before you get it. So there has to be on both parts. But it's really, there's nobody who can get you over that, not even your partner, but you, where you have to say, with the help of the Holy Spirit, because what comes to mind is, forgive us our debt as we forgive our debtors. Anytime I have something that's unforgiveness, is blocking the access to give me something. So I don't do this because you deserve it. I do this because this is what I need to do and what I want from there. So it's a lot in the mind. And therapy works. All right? I gotta run. Sorry for taking so much time.